Welcome back to this final update for Operation TS. We're going to look a bit closer at the Angel now. And we first noticed the Angel when we were looking at our area of interest. Within the area of interest at the time, the Angel was a vessel that had been reporting on AIS pretty consistently with only 8 days of missing AIS, but actually hadn't been into port for over 300 days, which seemed unusual. Looking into Spire's PV data, it became apparent that during its time off the coast of Africa, this vessel was actually likely spoofing its location and had headed over to Venezuela. Since this report, Rae Baker has also highlighted that this vessel was OFAC sanctioned in 2021 when it was named the BALITA. The listing relates to this vessel's lifting of Venezuela oil, an activity it looks like it is most likely continuing under its new name Angel. The vessel also has a pretty long history of flag, ownership and name changes, a topic we explored more closely when we looked at the rewa in our second video on the 6th of November. When we first looked at the Angel, we also noted a slightly unusual travel pattern as it exited the area of concern and then travelled north to quickly turn back and head back to the area of concern. It appears as though on the 28th of October this vessel's destination was set to travel to China. At this point it left the area of concern where it had arrived on the 27th after a brief period of loitering. One thing that really stood out was the vessel's very consistent speed as it travelled north and then back down into the area of concern. So we're just going to look into that a little bit more now. So here we're focusing on the vessel's journey north, and I've just turned on the highest resolution we have available for the AIS data, and I'm also going to overlay the vessel's speed on the track. And what we can see is a fairly consistent speed for this vessel as it heads out of the area, and then when we get to around the 31st of October, this becomes even more consistent. And we see that continue on right up until it reaches this point. Now looking at the journey back again, we can see that the vessel has turned around at this point and started to head back down. And if you just keep an eye over here, you'll see that that speed really doesn't change from 12 nautical miles for this entire duration. So what we looked into a little bit further was the known spoofing period for when this vessel was out of footprint, to have a look at what the speed looked like and that travel pattern looked like during this time. So over here is where we know the vessel was spoofing based on Spire's PV data. So through up until this point in time, the vessel had out of footprint reports from Spire. And we can see again that the vessel's speed is very consistently hovering around that 12 nautical mile point. At this point here, we begin to get validated positions again from Spire PV. And you can start to see that somewhere between those points, that speed starts to fluctuate a lot more. And again, when we explored the rest of this journey, which was also validated by Spire's PV, we started to see a lot more variation in the speed, which looked more like what you would expect. I'm just going to click back now to our original area of concern and that vessel's journey north. So one of the things that we should consider when we're looking at a vessel's behaviour is obviously the oceanographic conditions. So if we turn on some of our oceanographic layers here, we can have a look, for example, at what the wind velocity may have been during this vessel's journey. So once I've turned this on, you can see that the wind speed is fairly low and it's associated here with the vessel at under 12 knots. The vessel's speed heading north was also a bit slower than the speed heading back south again, which is in line with there being a bit of a tailwind here. Looking at the wave height, we can see that it's incredibly calm conditions with waves of under a metre. And those conditions were pretty consistent throughout this travel period. However, because the vessel's consistent speed for so many days was surprising, we did dig a little bit further and we had looked to see if there was potentially any satellite imagery we might be able to use to understand a bit more about where this vessel might be. So here we've got our acquisition from Sentinel-2 optical imagery. I'm just going to zoom into where the Angel was during this time, but you can see we were very fortunate that the overpass covered a good part of the vessel's tracks. So we've got 4 vessels that we've marked on the map here. This first vessel here, which is quite hard to see, that's a very small 20-meter Indonesian tug. This vessel here is a larger Hong Kong China flag vessel. It's a 172-meter cargo vessel. And this vessel here is the same actually, also a Hong Kong flagged 172-meter cargo vessel. The last vessel, which is quite close to where we believe the Angel to be, is this vessel here, but it's actually heading in the wrong direction. And this large vessel looks like it's a 344-meter Panamanian cargo vessel. We were expecting to see the Angel steaming along this vessel track here, and it doesn't appear to be there. This supports the potential theory that the vessel's uneconomic trip further north may not represent its true locations. So we don't really know where the Angel is, which makes it really hard to look for additional satellite imagery that might support understanding where it has gone. So one thing we wanted to share, and this is very much work in development, so we're excited to get any feedback you might have, but is a new algorithm our data science team is working on. So I'm just going to drop this onto the map. So the aim of this new algorithm is to explore a bit more about potential ports that a vessel may have visited when it's not reporting its location correctly on AIS. And to do this, the algorithm will take into a variety of different factors, including what might be the common travel routes for vessels of the same type, and if vessels of that same type also visit those ports. So in this case, from this point where potentially the AIS positions for the Angel may not be accurate, what ports could it have reached in the time that we do not know its location, and then returned again to where we do know its location. And one of the things with the algorithm is it also considers how long the port visit potentially could be based on other vessels of the same type and how long they would visit that port for. So you can see there's dotted lines as well as some solid lines here on the map. And the dotted lines represent ports at this stage where vessels of that type don't tend to visit, whereas the solid lines represent ports where, in this case, tankers would be more likely to visit. So we're based on the fact that the vessel had set its location on the 28th of October to China. Potentially, if the vessel did carry on to visit China, one of the most likely ports for it to visit may have been in this area. Now, this is very much a work in progress, so any feedback you might have on our approach taken here would be very much appreciated by our data science team. Jumping forward in time again, the Angel is currently in our area of concern and has loitering behaviour in the area and reported draft changes during this time. There are no other vessels nearby, but it does look like potentially it may have returned to the area and may be transshipping. And that is the final update for this week of Operation TS. Thank you so much for joining us, and thanks again to S&P Global Market Intelligence, Spire Maritime, Planet, Rae Baker, Charlie Brown, and tankertrackers.com for all their support this week. We hope to bring you a final update in the coming weeks highlighting our key learnings from Operation TS, and please do provide any feedback you might have to support this.